Hello, beautiful people, and welcome back to the Iron Purpose podcast. Today, I have a special guest. My friend Maggie Chapin comes on, and we talk about her role as a social worker within a correctional facility. Now, about three-fourths of the way through the episode, we end up setting a disclaimer, which we should have done in the beginning, but that's where I come in right here, and I tell you that right now. But when we get talking about a population within a jail, and a people who are hurting, a people who are trying to get their lives back together, and they're struggling with addiction. They're struggling with whether that's alcohol, whether it's drug addiction. It's I don't want to say minor crimes because there are some pretty severe crimes and stuff that can happen when you're involved in alcohol and addiction and some other things. But these people they haven't completely thrown their lives away yet. And Maggie is speaking about this population and trying to get them back on track, get them out of this loop of recidivism, trying to keep them out of the correctional facility, trying to keep them out of jail so they can get back on track. And sometimes when people enter jail, they're labeled, as a criminal or as somebody who's been incarcerated, regardless of what they're in there for. And it really makes it difficult for them to get back into the community, which is Maggie's job as a social worker through with reentry with the jail. So, I kind of wanted to set that disclaimer because there are a lot of people who have been hurt by people who are currently incarcerated, who are currently in jail. And some of these people have done some very, very awful things. And we're not necessarily talking about that's part of the population. We're more so talking about the people who are really struggling and trying to keep them from becoming a population who is within a jail or within a prison for a long period of time. Trying to break that cycle before they can get to that point, try to get them re-entered back into community to be a functioning member of society, one that is full of purpose and full of passion to try to do great things. And Maggie is doing a very good job at that. And along with her team of other social workers and the people at the jail, it's an awesome opportunity to be able to work with her, somebody who is so passionate about what she does. It goes a long way when you really do believe in the people that you're trying to serve and trying to help. And even if you're not able to help everybody, to be able to have that mentality to still go, even if people are saying, hey, you're wasting your time, or these people are hopeless, or they're a lost cause, lock them up, throw away the key. It's important to have different services in place so that these people can not only better themselves, but move out into the community and make a difference within their own little sphere of influences. So that is what the conversation kind of talks about today. This is the Iron Purpose Podcast, episode 17, featuring my friend Maggie Chapin. Enjoy, everybody. Stay sharp. All right. We finally did it. This has been one in the making for a little while now, but we got it down. I was just talking with Maggie beforehand and trying to figure out which episode this is, and she said the best one. So now we got to live up to it.
That's no shade to any other one.
I think it was shade to all of them. Everybody getting mad. Everybody that's been on this podcast go after Maggie now. Just kidding. Don't do that.
I think
She's
that
a very nice
every
lady.
episode that comes out is the best one yet. So.
I love that. That's awesome. How you doing? What you been up to lately? Anything fun and exciting? Enjoying the warm weather?
That's just it. I am loving just getting to be outside. I have a dog who is very high energy, so getting her outside has been life-changing for the both of us.
Yes.
So she's been tearing it up at the dog park and just been doing a lot. Anything we can to get outside is just awesome.
Yeah,
so
my dog's the same way, and our yard has been a disaster lately because it was all ice and snow. Then that finally melted, and I was out there the other day, and I threw the ball once for Sully, and he went after it, and I could just see the mud flying up after him. I'm just like, oh man.
Yes. 2 weeks ago, I took my dog's name's Olive to the groomer to get her nice spring haircut, so that's been good too. Because yes, all of the water and snow and mud, and of course that's right where they want to be.
I know. Yeah, and they got so muddy that day, so I had to give them a bath right after that. It's like, all right, we're not going to the backyard for further notice, but thankfully it's with the nice sun, it's dried up back there a little bit. I'm looking out at it right now, but yeah, and they love their walks. But I guess also this is the first episode that I'm a dad, so
Woo!
you get that, yeah.
That's so exciting.
I was
Are
gonna
you
wear.
just loving it?
It's been a good process. Yeah, I was gonna wear my Iron Purpose hat for this, but I thought it'd be fitting to wear the Dad Gang one that my wife got me for Christmas. But no, it's been really good. It's obviously come with its challenges, but last night was really good. It was really good. So
awesome.
There's 2 stints where he slept for 3 hours in his bassinet after being fed, and so it was really nice for Courtney and I to get some sleep and try to.
Yeah.
That's been the biggest thing, just sleep management. So I've been pretty much running off of caffeine. I already was, but even more so now.
But now you have a good reason.
Yes.
You have a good reason.
Yeah, it's like two energy drinks. Yeah, we can do it. The other night.
That's fine.
Yeah, the other night, I haven't had a Bang energy drink in a while, and those things have a lot of caffeine, like 300 milligrams. And the UFC fights are on, so Saturday night, and they don't get done till normally about 12 o'clock at night. So I was like, all right, I cracked open a Bang at like 10:30, 11, and I stayed up all night with him to try to let Courtney sleep, but it was just like, yeah, I need this right now, and we're going to stay up as late as we can, but it's been a while since I pulled an all-nighter, but yeah, he's doing well. He's been doing so good. He's been eating well, and he's just gets a little fussy here and there, but every baby does. We all do. Right. Everybody gets a little fussy.
Yeah, does that end?
I don't think so. I'm trying to think. Even yesterday I was fussy at times, but yeah. Well, cool. I'm super excited to have you on here. Now I'm going to give you the floor, give you an opportunity to kind of share about yourself and what got you to where you are today. And then we'll have a couple questions. A new thing that I am trying out on this podcast is, and like I discussed with you beforehand, I'm going to continue sharing or giving my guests the floor to share their story and have a conversation based off of their story that we can all learn from and relate to and grow from. But I also want to get a topic in there as well. So each episode is going to have a topic kind of relating to the person to kind of help the conversation flow even better and let people understand a little bit more about these different topics. So with that being said, take it away, Miss Maggie Chapin.
All right. All right. So I guess I could share a little bit about to the people how we know each other.
Yeah.
So we work together at the jail. I'm a social worker there. And so I can just kind of talk a little bit about, again, like you said, why I do what I do and why I feel so passionate about it. I don't have any kind of crazy, super inspiring story, but I certainly have worked my way through some challenges throughout my life, both in childhood, early adulthood, and all of that. So oftentimes when I'm thinking about this, I don't know the answer to this question yet, because I sometimes think, is it like chicken or the egg, right? Like, am I the way I am because of my experiences, or did I handle those experiences and see those experiences the way I did because of who I am? I don't really know, but I don't know that it really matters, right? Like, I think that when you kind of grow up through some really challenging things, obviously you, at the time, wish things were different, or you're going to school and see different things, or spending nights at friends' houses and kind of thinking, wow, that's a lot different than what's going on. And so, and then you'll get into your teens and kind of have those, then you start thinking about, right, like, I have control of my own life when I turn 18 and I can do whatever I want to do. And it starts to shift a little bit and get almost exciting,
Mm-hmm.
But I think what sometimes we forget is that even though we think that, yep, I'm moving on from that stuff, that you can almost kind of forget, right? Like, that stuff is not gonna impact me anymore, and that's just sadly not true. And I feel like I certainly learned that over and over again through my 20s, trying to kind of find your way as an adult, and different parts of your life, different seasons of your life, different relationships you have in your life. And so anyway, I knew right away that when I was going into college, that I wanted to work with the population that I felt was so overlooked and underserved. And that was the population that gets kind of wrapped up into the criminal justice system. And I did a internship. No, it wasn't an internship. I just job shadowed in high school in corrections as a probation officer. And I just felt like that wasn't really my jam. Although it was the right population, it wasn't exactly the goal that I was wanting to kind of achieve in the work that I do. Although I think it's very important, it is an important piece. It just wasn't what I was kind of on my heart wanting to do. And so I have an older cousin who has kind of gone down the same journey. And I had a really good conversation with her kind of about this whole thing. And at the time, she was a social worker at the Moose Lake prison in northern Minnesota. And so I had some really good insight from her into shifting gears and going into social work because she had the insight at that time, being quite a bit older than me, that she felt there was going to be this shift coming where social workers were going to be implemented into these areas, and that people coming in with more of that criminal justice or corrections background, they were maybe hoping they would be more on like security side of things, and that just again wasn't really kind of what I was looking for. So that's kind of how I ended up in social work. My mom worked for the county her whole career. And so she is somebody who she's my biggest role model. She's the best person ever. And I want to be just like her. And so I just always admired her views on just like her work ethic and employment as a whole, and working kind of like in a systematic position, because it's social work is in pretty much anywhere, right? You've got schools, hospitals, county level work, and within those, there's all kinds of different options as well. So, speaking specifically to the county level social workers, it definitely has its own challenges in that you are working for the government, right? So you have certain stipulations, guidelines, different things that you have to do, or you're kind of bound by, versus some, independent, nonprofit type jobs. So, like I said, I just spent a ton of time talking with my mom through those years of like just working through like, where do I want to be? What do I want to do? And ultimately I got my social work degree, and I did it like a dual degree program. So I got I have a degree in human development, family science, and a degree in social work. And again, I think there's such beauty in that type of program, because you get a social work degree, but there's so many different areas you could go into, so I felt like I really got a good education around working with really any different population. But I can say now, having worked in the field for quite some time, your best experience comes from doing the job. Just like anything else, you can think, have that educational background, and that's very important. Same with trainings and different things like that. But you definitely find your groove once you're in it. And so I did start my career in child protection, and I did that for about, from 2017 to 2020. And since that time, I've spent the rest of my time in county jails doing reentry work with inmates. So yeah, that's kind of how I came to be here. I love it. I feel very passionate about it. Social work is certainly a career that has a high turnover rate. Because you take on a lot. You take on a lot of other people's stuff. You're meeting people at oftentimes their lowest point.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, like you said, we'll kind of go into this further, but you really have to find where you fit in that, because if you're not 100% passionate and believe in what you're doing, that burnout is going to get you. And it's a hard thing to battle, right? That's like
Mm-hmm.
any other job. But I think sometimes, you know, in the fields like this, people don't always get that, you know, because it's like, I feel like some people, a lot of people probably don't even know what social workers really do, right? Like they know we're there. They know like, okay, maybe this is something they can handle. I don't really know what you do, but here, and we do it, right? That's it's kind of our thing. Like we find ways to get to problem solve. And also shout out to my social workers. March is social work month.
Oh, so, is it? Aw.
Yes.
There we go.
Yes. So
I love that.
Yeah. But anyway, let's roll into kind of what you're saying, unless you have any follow-up questions.
I do have a few.
I was just yapping.
Yeah.
So
no, that's exactly what I like. I like when some people are like, "Oh, I like to ramble a little bit. Sorry." It's like, no, that's right what I want. Here, hold on.
When you get me on something that I'm like passionate about,
bring it on.
Yeah.
I love it. So, when you first started talking, you said that you wanted to get involved with a population that was overlooked.
Mm-hmm.
Where did that come from? Was there a time in your life where you noticed somebody being overlooked and you said, I want to fight for that person?
Yes, I had somebody very close to me struggling with a lot of the things that then ultimately you end up in this criminal justice system. Whether that's addiction or obviously any kind of criminal charges, but oftentimes those things go hand in hand, right? A majority of the time, there are underlying issues. And then again, like for so long, I think there was this disconnect that, you know, everybody who commits a crime just deserves the punishment. You did this, you deserve that punishment. Now here's your consequence, and we're just gonna put you away, and then expect that consequence is going to prevent you from doing this again. And that's not to say that for some people they made a bad choice, they hated going to jail, and will never do that again. There is that population, but that is such a small percentage, right? That is not the majority, not even close to it. And so when you really start to look at this person in my life was somebody who I just loved and adore, and I knew at the core who they were, right? And to see somebody like that having to go through this system and be treated like they are absolutely nothing other than, you know, this horrible person that, you know, and so I just felt like even through that time, seeing that happen, it was my opinion that there weren't supports to help, right? There was people who were keeping an eye on them to make sure they were adhering to what they needed to do, right? It was, are you doing this? And if you're not, you're in trouble. But there was nothing in there to say, do you need help with this? How is this going? Are you struggling with this? And if you are, how can we adapt, change things to make you more successful? I never saw that in that process. And so that, and I was, you know, always this person's biggest fan, even through their challenges, you know, when you when you can see somebody at their lowest and still see who they are as a person. And that has always been, what I would consider one of my favorite qualities about myself. But it's also something that can kind of bite you sometimes, right? Like, But I think about all the times in my life that maybe that's come back to bite me. And even in those situations, I've never found myself saying, I wish I would have never, tried to see the good in that person, or,
Mm-hmm.
oh, they fooled me. That's not, it's just, so when I'm saying that they're overlooked, I think that once someone gets in that cycle, people just write them off. That's who they are. That's who they want to be. That's who they're always going to be. And there's no hope for these people. And that's the other thing. The term "these people" drives me bonkers.
Mm-hmm.
There is no such thing as these people. And so, yeah, I just think, again, we for so long have overlooked this population and just thought that they weren't worth digging deeper into what's really going on here, and how can we address that and help them to be successful.
Right.
So
I love
I hope
that.
that answered your
Yeah,
question.
no, and I think it is very important to be able to see that light in somebody, even among the darkness that or the struggle that they're in. And
Mm-hmm.
I myself was dealing with, am I a servant minded man or am I a yes man? And do I just do all these things because I just want to say do it because people
Yeah.
want me to do it, or am I doing it because I want to serve and be there for them? And that was something that I battled for a little while, and it's like I would rather, and I got some advice from people that I look up to, and they're like, I would rather you be a servant-minded individual and have other people think that you're a yes man than
Mm-hmm.
not, than to be the latter, than to be, the opposite of a servant-minded person and not care at all. It's like you may get
Yeah.
burned by some people, you may get used, they may abuse that kindness that you have, but at the end of the day, if you know in your heart of hearts that you're trying to make a difference in that person, they end up saying, you know what, screw you, man. Then it's like,
Yeah.
all right, well, hey, I know that I did my part. However you want to take it, that it is what it is. And I think
Yeah.
that's really important, especially in a jail setting too, because you go into the
Mm-hmm.
career, you think, I want to make a difference. I'm going to change every life, and you see that that's not the case. Unfortunately, some people don't turn their lives around right away or the way you think they would. But even if it's one person that you're impacting or trying to save, like
Yeah.
that makes all the difference. Like we're not doing
Yeah.
it for all the people that that aren't going to succeed. There are they're going to keep failing. It's for the maybe the one or two
Yeah.
that do in those lives that we can change. So
Yeah. And I think, like, um it's part of it is changing what we believe is someone being successful, right? I think that I had a good conversation with Chris, who we work with, who kind of runs the impact program we have at the jail, because at one point somebody had asked him, like, how are you going to know when your program is successful? And his answer was something along the lines of, like, I'm going to monitor, or like, he would know that it's successful when people stop coming back to jail. And ultimately, of course, that's what that program is about. That's what our program is about, is to try and help people get to a place where they don't have to. However, I had a good conversation with him about how that's not that doesn't determine how successful the program is, or how successful your work is that you've put into this. Because somebody might um, somebody might end up coming back into jail for something, but for the last year they've been working really hard on a lot of other things and actually making a ton of progress in their life, and to them, that their steps, their changes, are big successes. And for us to just say as providers that because they came back to jail they're not successful just isn't true, and it doesn't speak to the work we do. All we can do as providers is continue to try and help people, give them the opportunity, give them the resources. But at the end of the day, it does come back to them and the choices that they make. And um, I just think it's not good to get in that area of determining success on whether or not somebody is doing what we feel or we would define as success.
I saw a quote the other day. It was in a podcast that I was listening to. My identity is not tied to the results I have. The results I have when I know I put in the work.
Mm-hmm.
My identity is not tied to the results I have when I know I put in the work. So this person may come back to jail, but my identity and my work isn't based off of the fact that they came back. Because, like you said, during that time where they were away, where they were succeeding, not only were they
Mm-hmm.
doing good at that time, but they were also being the person they want to be and that they should be for the other people around them. So maybe they had a family member, a kid, a friend, somebody who was struggling, and they were at their high point in their success, where they were able to change that person's life. And I'm getting goosebumps thinking
Mm-hmm.
about this because guys in the impact program, they'll do the same thing. It's like maybe they will come back. Maybe they will mess up and they'll come back. But while they're at their best, while they're succeeding, while they're doing well, like that's going to trickle effect on people that we will never see. So to
Yeah.
base that off of, oh, they failed again. It's like we don't
Mm-hmm.
know the success and the impact that that made. Maybe they were in
Exactly.
addiction. Maybe they were selling drugs. Maybe they were aggressive. Whatever why they're in there. Maybe somebody was trying to buy drugs from them at one point when they're at their highest point. They're like, nah, man, I'm done with that. This is what I've seen. My eyes
Mm-hmm.
been opened up, and who knows who they could be
Yeah.
impacting just based off of that time where they're doing good. So,
Well, and I just think of how many times I'm a big goals person. I like to think of what I'm looking for, set a goal, and try and achieve that goal. I have never once done it perfect every single time. You know what I mean? And
mm-hmm,
so, granted, goals are different, they're seen as different. Um, Me trying to eat clean for 1 week straight, to me, that's my goal. Well, this other person, they're just trying to, like, if I can make it 2 days without using drugs, that's their goal. And them achieving that goal should be seen just as exciting as me reaching whatever goal I set for
mm-hmm,
myself. So I think it's so easy for people who aren't in the cycle, or in addiction, or mental health. We haven't talked much about that, but that's such a big thing. And luckily that's become, there's so much more awareness around that. And I think we are starting to move in a direction where people are starting to understand that there are deeper issues going on, that need to be addressed. And so I think it's just so easy from people on the outside looking in to say, to write these, you know, uh, define what they feel is appropriate or successful, or, what have you. And I don't have that mindset, which is why I do what I do, and I love what I do, and I will
mm-hmm,
stand by what I do, and I will battle that all day.
mm-hmm,
um, because I just think there's some lack of education, and um,
mm-hmm,
just around it in general, right? But I do feel that things are moving in the right direction.
mm-hmm.
I would say a majority, and I can only speak to Minnesota, I guess, that I know the best, but a majority of our jails have these programs, all on different levels, right? Just based on resources and what you can and cannot do, because this, on top of being working at like the government level, you're now also bound by DOC regulations too, because you're now in that facility. So um, I think that there's just, I'm totally losing my train of thought. But
Uh-oh.
anyway, I know. I'm like, oh no, here I am rambling.
Squirrel.
Squirrel, yeah, literally. Um,
But on the same
I
lines, it's cool that we're kind of dancing around these topics that I've kind of pulled up too. But there's a theory that I looked up. It's called the labeling theory. Once labeled a criminal, it affects how society treats them. So once you go to jail, people, they get affected by society, regardless of what they're in there for. They're automatically labeled in this group of people that aren't good enough, or they're not qualified. They're not on the same level as us, kind of thing.
They're
And
scary. These are
yeah,
very dangerous, scary people.
all right. And some maybe. Like, it's okay to not be
Yep.
complacent, but at the same time, it's like, really?
Yeah.
Like, really?
Yep.
And and I think where you come in too, it's called the Pygmalion effect. I looked it up. It's expectations shape behavior. If people are expected to fail, they often do, and I think those two kind of come hand in hand. So when you're labeled a criminal and you're expected to fail, when you lock them up, throw away the key, kind of like you said, why you got into social work in the first place, to offer more solutions to these people, to help them not or help them to understand that they're not a failure, that they can be plugged back in. There is a re-entry, that path is there for them.
Yes.
And
Mm-hmm.
so the people that are expected to fail often do. If given real support and belief, they have a higher chance of succeeding. And when you have somebody that really does believe in you and is in the job for the right reasons, kind of like you talked about in the beginning, that goes a long way too. Like if you're in it just for the power, especially like a correctional officer kind of thing, where where you have the authority over people, or in a social work setting where if you're just doing it to make yourself feel good, like these people are going to read right through that right away. And when you can be
Yeah.
authentic with them and like believe in them, and they can see that you believe in them, that goes leaps and bounds
Yeah.
towards making them a better
Yep.
person, because then they start to believe in themselves when they see that you believe in them, and given that real support and belief, they have a higher chance of succeeding.
Yeah. And I think, again, this is where I come into this population being overlooked, underserved, because I think if you were to sit down with a group of your friends and explain that theory, just like about you, right? Like everybody would be like, well, of course, like the more people I have in my corner, of course I'm going to be more successful. Like, right? It's like, yeah, common sense, of course, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But people all of a sudden forget that when you're looking at this population of people, as if they don't deserve that same energy or hope or anything. And so that's where I feel like there is a big disconnect, because you would never tell your friend that I like you're probably not going to be successful, and mostly just because that's how I feel.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're not gonna say that ever. So like,
Right.
why those kinds of comments come into play when it's surrounded this population is just really disheartening, because these are the people who really do need help. And sadly, a lot of these people they have burned bridges, they don't have supports, they don't have their families, or they're surrounded by just as unhealthy people. And so they're really lacking that. They don't know where to find that. They've never been shown what healthy support is. They've never had anybody believing in them. I think I was just having this conversation with another coworker, and he was telling me how he is always so sure to tell his kids that he's proud of them, and that came from an inmate that he was talking to, kind of expressed to him that he never heard his dad tell him he was proud of him, ever. And so I think like there's just so much that we can learn from people who struggle through these things if we would just listen, right? They might not have college degrees or even high school diplomas, but that does not mean that they don't have insight or things to add. And I think that that's the beauty of your conversations and impact too, right? Like you kind of introduce a topic, and then they kind of talk amongst themselves. And I haven't had a chance to sit in on any of them, but just in staffings and conversations we've had, I just think that there's really some beauty in that, right? And I work more one-on-one with everybody in the jail, but I've learned a lot, and I've changed my opinions or my views on a lot of things from information that I've been taught from my clients. And I just think there's so much beauty in that, because they do it. Yes, they have way different experiences, things that we will never understand. By the grace of God, we never had to experience a lot of those things, and we will never understand those things. So I think if as a society, we could stop looking at them as they have nothing to add, they have no worth in a sense, right? Like they are a burden to our communities, and we're paying for them to be in jail and blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, if we want crime rates to go down, if we want less of this in our communities, then we need to be supporting programs that help them. So sometimes I feel that that's frustrating, where people feel that, in this, where we work too, like, I'll just use that as an example, like the people in the jail, why are we spending our money on them when there's people more deserving who aren't in jail? And it's like, who makes that call, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, but I think that's the stigma. So like you're saying, if we're just identifying people that way and essentially telling them this is all you are and you're never going to be successful, of course they're going to believe that.
Mm-hmm.
That's human nature. Every single one of us is the same way.
Right.
If I tell you, Bailey, you're never going to reach that goal over and over and over again, you're going to start believing it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of this is just who we are as human beings. And it's just, I look forward to a day when people can really start to see that this population is so much more than what we see them as now.
An awesome segue. Couple questions based off of kind of what we've talked about, this theory and this effect, and kind of why you got into social work in a correctional setting. How do you help employers and community members see former inmates as more than just their past mistakes? And what would you say to someone who believes people don't change and shouldn't be given a second chance? Like, I'm sure you've been faced with those questions before.
Oh yeah, and I love them. Because this is, I think that it's just awareness. It's getting things like reentry programs in jails, impact programs in jails. And I will bring up Jelly Roll, for example, who I think I love to see people, just huge celebrities, using their platforms to raise awareness and speak positively about those kinds of populations.
Especially he was a former, like he is that population. Yeah.
And that's awesome. where I think it's funny. Like nobody has, that I should say, that I have ever experienced. Like people love Jelly Roll, right? Like he has a huge following. His concerts are sold out. Never once have I heard somebody say, yeah, but did you know that his past, you know what I mean? So it's like at somewhere along the way, people decide who is worth a second chance and who isn't. And that's just simply, like, we as human beings, we were not put on this earth to judge one another or to decide who's more worthy of time, effort, resources, chances. We're supposed to help each other, period. And that doesn't matter if it takes you one time or if I have to help you 10 times, and I will continue to do that. Oftentimes when we have people who I worked with and worked pretty intensely with, and they have a good plan in place, and unfortunately they do come back, oftentimes I have the conversations because they're like, I'm so sorry, Maggie, I'm so sorry. And it's like, don't be sorry. Like, okay, this didn't work. Now, what's our next plan? And I think so often they're surprised, like, you're not, like you still believe in me. And it's like, of course I do, but I just think, going back to your actual question, is like, if we can get more people spreading awareness. And I saw a clip from one of Jelly Roll's concerts where he had gone to, I think he was in Virginia, and he had gone to a county jail, and that's where he learned that they had kind of this reentry type program set up, and he ended up bringing, I think, a few of the guys in that program to the concert, and gave them a little shout out, and had like a little spiel to his crowd about how it's time that we stop treating inmates like they are nothing, and we start talking about what the real problems are here, right? Like, how are we gonna help people? Because as we are learning, just locking them up and throwing away the key is not the solution, and it doesn't work, right? Eventually, for most people, they are going to return to our communities, and why would we not want them in a better place at that time than when they left?
Right.
So,
Because it's only going to have that trickle effect, like we talked about earlier. And it's cool. I went to a store the other day and was talking to one of the managers who I know, and he's like, "Hey, recognize that guy?" And I looked down the aisle and I was like, "Yeah, I do. He was at the jail and he was, a worker there and stuff." And he's
yeah.
like, "Yeah, and he's doing so great. He's promotable. He's been an awesome worker." And it's like, had we just locked him up and threw away the key, maybe he wouldn't have
Mm-hmm.
had the same mentality that he has now.
Yeah.
And it's
And
cool. Go ahead.
I had one more thought on like how we, using platforms. Our sheriff's office is very active on Facebook, which I think is really cool. And so recently they had put a post up of one of the Impact graduates, and just the amount of positive feedback
Mm,
from that was just amazing. But also it caught the eye of the news, right? So then the news wanted to come in and do a story, and that went out to reach even more people. And so I do think, and I'm hopeful that things are continuing to move in the right direction, and that the more that these kinds of things get promoted, the more people are going to rethink their ideas of correctional facilities.
yeah, that's a great point. And just to touch on too, when you said how when people come back and they apologize, it's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry," or there's some guys in there too who have been in the impact program who have had really deep conversations with me, and then they'll come back into jail and they kind of keep their distance. They'll kind of see me and kind of
Mm-hmm.
wander in the back, and I'm like, "What's up, man? How's it
Yeah.
going?" And they're like, "Oh man, not good." And a lot of times I'll just
Yeah.
say, "All right, well, just get the next one. Hey, it's not the end
Yeah.
of the world. Get the next one." And they're pretty
And
they're pretty surprised by that. They're like, "Well, you're not
yeah.
mad. You're not going to judge me." And it's like, "Well, no, man. That's not my responsibility. Not only am I not going to do
Yeah.
that, because there's if I sat down and really looked at why everybody was there, it'd probably drive me crazy. Just all the different things that are
Yeah.
going on. So it's just like
Yeah.
it's not my responsibility. It's my responsibility to hang out with you while you're in here and try to make an impact on your life for the better. And a lot of times they're like,
Yeah.
"Oh wow!" Like
Yeah.
even just these people. Like, sorry, I don't mean to use these people.
Bailey.
These hurting individuals who are in a correctional facility who are overlooked at oftentimes, and um, to see somebody not judge them and also be like, "Hey, just get the next one." Like a lot of times that is even enough to propel them to go, what, I'm not gonna come
Yeah.
back. I don't.
Yeah. Well, and I think even, like we've been talking about, the people who come back and that kind of they hold that shame, and I think, sadly, I hate to see people like that, but again, like we address that, right? And say, hey, it's fine. Like we just keep moving. But for them to come in and feel that just goes to show that you having hope in them and believing in them means a lot to them.
Mm-hmm.
I had a Zoom meeting with one of our very first Impact graduate last week, who's been doing amazing in the
Oh, that's so
community.
good to hear.
Yes, but he was telling me the other day that he feels very motivated because his situation is, if something goes wrong, he does have a pretty hefty consequence hanging over his head. And I had just made the comment, like, do you feel like that's helping you? And he said, yeah, kind of. But he said, I'm so much more motivated knowing that I have you, as in me. You're counting on me. The impact guys are counting on me. Like everybody took a chance on me and they're counting on me. And like, I'm not gonna let you guys down.
Mm.
So, and that to me is just like, it means so much, right? Like we don't do the work we do because we want people to thank us or, whatever. That's not it. But when we can be the reason that people want to change and want to do better, like if that's all we do and all that took was some conversations with them, I just think that that's awesome, right?
Mm-hmm.
And um, so I just love it. I love, and I think a lot of times it comes to um, changing conversations held in jails as well by staff members. So I think a lot of times there are conversations or jokes that take place that I have no problem kind of reminding are not appropriate, or um, like you might have been joking, but they take that seriously and that sticks with them. So I think
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes, if it is somebody who comes and goes a lot from the facility, the joke when you're releasing them is like, all right, we'll see you next time. Or, or if they do come back, is like, oh, well, you didn't come back as fast as I thought you would, and those things, whether they're said as jokes or not, like those kind of comments just are reinforcing things that they're already thinking about themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't need to be doing that.
It reminds me of like soccer. I remember being like playing soccer in high school, and I like went to shoot and I missed it completely. And the coach was like, "Bailey, what are you doing?" Yeah, you're like, obviously, I didn't mean to do that.
Yeah.
I don't kick me while I'm down. I understand. I don't need to hear your stupid comments. Yeah,
exactly. Well, and that's just it. It's like, yeah, maybe this person, normally they were coming in once a month, and now we haven't seen them for 6 months, 8 months. That is a win, and that is success. Mm-hmm. It's not perfection, but nobody should be held to that standard. I don't care who you are. But those kind of comments, they do diminish the work that they did do. Any little bit of fire they started to build inside them again, hearing somebody say that to you is just like, okay, so I think that's another part of changing, holding staff to a standard and not allowing for that kind of stuff to happen in your facilities, is another big thing that I think comes into play when I think about both of those theories. It's just like the idea of self-talk, right? Like how you talk to yourself is how you're going to start perceiving yourself. And it's no different talking to somebody else.
Absolutely. So to kind of wrap it up here, how do you think society can better support successful reintegration and reduce recidivism within the community? And I know, again, we're talking about, not overlooking these people and understanding they're still human. And like on the flip side of it too, there are also families out there that have been severely hurt by these people based off of things they've done. And there are a lot of people hurting. And so to hear a conversation of us, maybe saying, they're human, they're great, all this stuff, they're probably like, you weren't there when he, did this to me, or how he abused me, or all these different things. And, the law enforcement side of me too is understanding that we're not being complacent within this either. Like there is still there's still that level of safety and security that we have to maintain when dealing with some of these individuals. But that aside, what do you think people can do to do their part in helping these people with their reintegration back into the community and reducing that recidivism, which means keeping people from coming back into the facility?
Yeah, good question. I don't know that that's just a quick wrap-up question. But I do think that, I think you're right. I think maybe we should have prefaced this conversation by saying that, we're not dismissing behavior, right? We're not dismissing the fact that people are hurt in these situations. Or overlooking the fact that there are, unfortunately, people in our systems that probably the safest place for them is to be in a correctional facility. There is that population. I think that our conversation, I guess for me personally, I'm talking about that part of the population that is wrapped in the cycle of, addiction, mental health, those, which is the majority, right? So you have the small population of people who probably just won't reoffend because they made a mistake once. You have the other population that unfortunately may never come out of this cycle or have done such heinous things that they need to be in a correctional facility. So I think in regards to this conversation and kind of what your question is, I guess I'll just speak to that small population in our communities that are just in this cycle of I don't even want to say like committing these like minor crimes, because that's not necessarily what I'm getting at either. But the people who got in trouble and have continued to come in on probation violation because they are struggling in the system. They're struggling in our communities. That's the population that if we can, hone in on them. So to answer your question in regards to that population, I think, there are a lot of events that are in our community anyway that the Blade puts on, that Crowing Energize puts on around uh, addiction prevention, and um, we're getting to be much more aware of mental health and mental health resources.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a big thing is trying to change that perception that people in this cycle are dangerous, scary, bad people.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of times, those sorts of things, if they are doing things that would be seen as violent or dangerous, oftentimes comes from addiction as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they're not acting in their right mind. They're not, so again, it comes back to trying to target in on that. What is the root cause going on here?
Right.
So that we can try and then just again, like supporting the programs we have in our communities that are trying to
Mm.
make a difference, supporting the impact program, supporting reentry, supporting our law enforcement who are already fighting their own battles, and just understanding that um, help, we need to be providing resources and help to this population just as much as anybody else.
Right. And it
So,
is also to help them break the cycle to get back into the community. And not everybody's going to be this way, but to help prevent them from becoming people that are committing more,
yeah,
serious crimes that will keep them locked up for long periods of time. And maybe that's, DUIs. Like, some people struggle with
yeah,
that, a lot of it, and it could harm somebody. And so trying to stop it, get them unaddicted from alcohol and getting them
yeah,
away from drugs, getting them out of these toxic environments, even their
yeah, and
own minds.
helping them understand why they feel they need to rely on chemicals. Like, are you using chemicals to cope with something? If so, like, let's figure out how we can address what's really going on
Mm-hmm.
here. Because I think a lot of times they just don't know. They don't know where to start. They feel overwhelmed. There's shame attached to it. There's shame. There's grief. There's loss. There's trauma. It's just so much more than a person who is choosing to make bad decisions. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and just, I think to kind of wrap things up, the way I live my life, and both professionally and personally, is truly on the belief that, like, the Bible to me is important, and it says that we're here to help each other. We're here to feed the hungry. To nowhere in there does it say, like, uh, you're supposed to feed the hungry, but only if they meet these requirements.
Right.
And so that's just where,
Mm-hmm.
like, it's not my place to decide who is or isn't worthy of that, or who deserves it or doesn't deserve it, right? Like, I'm put here to try and help those around me, and whatever that looks like, that's what I'm going to worry about. I'm not going to decide whether or not I think somebody is worthy of that. So
Right.
I think if we can get people to think more like that, or at least try to understand that there's more to it,
Mm-hmm.
I think we'll be in a much better place.
Absolutely. Continuing to shine that light in those dark places for those
Yes.
people who need to see
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. And just for them to see one person stand up for not only them, but like um the I just so obviously I handle most of Delta, which is a unit in our jail.
Mm-hmm.
And it's cool to me to see the guys um, they're proud of each other, right? And they're
Mm.
happy if I'm helping. So, I have one person say, "Hey, I just want to say thank you for what you did for so and so. I think that was really cool." And so I think just when there's somebody who can stand up for this population and they see that, makes a huge difference to them.
Mm-hmm.
So,
It really is. Yeah. Fight for those who are vulnerable, who can't fight for themselves. Shine that light for those who don't have that that light, and provide hope for people in dark places.
yeah,
It's awesome. It's what you're doing.
huge.
It's what our
Yeah.
social workers are doing, and it's an awesome resource. There was a time where there was an inmate who just got done with court, and he was refusing to go back into the unit, and I was gloving up. I was getting ready to go hands on. It's all right. Cowabunga, it is. Let's go. You want to fight? Let's go. And I'm going down the hallway to him, and we got a couple of guys behind me, and I stop. I'm like, Maggie's dealt with this guy before. She's working with him right now. I turn, I go to your office, I say, hey, you want to try to talk to him before we go in there and make him come out? You're like, yeah, okay. So you go in there and you talk with him, and you were able to talk him down and get him back into his cell safely and without putting us in harm's way too. So not only are you
Yeah.
helping get people integrated back into the community by providing these services for them, by helping them find jobs, helping them find homing, helping them find mental health services or jobs, whatever it is that you guys do, all of that. You're also providing that within the jail too by
Yeah.
being there for somebody and talking them through their struggles and kind of holding their hand
Yeah.
while they're down. So keep up the fantastic, amazing work. It's been it's been a pleasure to work with you and the other social workers, and I hope someday that every jail has the opportunity to have people like you in it to continue to shine your light
Thank you.
and help people out. So
yeah,
it was so much fun talking to you. I'm glad we finally got to do this.
I know. It only took a couple of times.
It's okay.
And
yeah.
That's also a part of social work. We try, but things change.
Just take it one day at a time. Yeah, it's your schedule, my schedule, baby, which I got to get back to baby now. But
okay.
Thank you so much. This was awesome, and we'll do it again sometime.
All right.
All right. Bye,
See
Maggie.
you later.